Bosh. And we're recording. Sweet. So everyone who's not here, who's watching this is the first Rolldark Roundtable of 2025. Woo!
Yay!
Hooray! Can you all hear that?
More enthusiasm, Chris.
Cool. Yeah, right.
There we go.
There you go. Loving it. Loving it. Nice. Nice. So yeah, what these roundtables are basically for is a chance for us as DMs, as Rolldark DMs, to get together and have a chat. Really get to know one another, get to understand what our best practices are as DMs, and really kind of just learn some sort of, some extra skills from one another and have some takeaways and just sort of think, oh, I never really thought about that, or I never thought about this, or whatever. And yeah, just a chance really to have a chat and just to try and improve and get better and just gain more confidence in the thing that we love doing, which is running tables for our ungrateful players. So let's have a look at our first subject then. So I'm just going to share my screen with you guys. Where is it? Here we go. Go live. Is that what you have to press? Is it share screen? Yeah.
Yes, go live.
Boom. Go live. Can you see that? There it is. Yeah.
Yes.
Cool. That's literally all it is. That's literally it. I thought I'd be a bit more dramatic than that, but obviously not. Okay, for those at home, I've just done it on the video. So player agency. Bump. Okay, so player agency. What does that mean to you guys as DMs? And what do you think it is, or how can you explain it? What does it make you feel when you hear that word, or those words, sorry? Who would like to start us off?
I'll go.
Go for it.
I don't believe in it. It's my story. I'm the GM. They
Nice.
know how to work.
Nice.
Um,
The end. Cool. Let's move on to the next subject.
Seconded.
So I think it's, for me, player agency is about giving my players the opportunity to make meaningful choices throughout a game or a campaign that not only impact the story, but the world around them, their own characters, and how I can intertwine their choices and decisions, whether it's short form, long form, into the campaign and the story that we're actively telling at the table at any given moment.
Nice.
I think something that's important for me whenever I run a game, whether it is short form, long form, is about setting that stall out early and trying to get my players invested in the fact that it's not just my story, it's our story. We're telling it together, and you are the players are the most important part in that. Like me as a DM, I'm just here to, steer it one way or another based on their decisions, and I think it's important that to try and get that buy-in early from a player is crucial, really.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. Anyone else like to add
Definitely.
anything else into that?
I think for me, one thing that I've really been mindful of, especially lately, is making sure that this is not just something that I do in terms of narrative, but also in terms of mechanics. So, because it's very easy to kind of think that the two are separate, but obviously are very deeply entwined. And if you make sure that it's mechanically relevant to the players, it gets them thinking that way around, that, what I do and say actually affects this game, so that's important. The most obvious way around that is the rule of three. For those who haven't come across this before, any problem that you put in front of your players, you should have 3 solutions for. So, again, they've got a guard in front of them. They can either sneak around them, or they can talk their way around it, or they can find an entirely different way into the building that they're trying to infiltrate. That's a very basic kind of level, but the more that you introduce that and the more that players realize that, oh no, I can do that, it not only gives them that agency, but also makes them think about the actions they're taking. And of course, the real magic there is when players ask, hey, wait a minute, can I? And then that's where the magic happens, when people start asking, can I do this? And that's when it all clicks together for me.
Nice. Okay, cool. Anyone else like to add anything else onto that?
I would say 2 things. One is I always say that the most important question that one can ask as a DM is, what would you like to do? Because I always, I'm sure we've all been there. You know, it's like you're doing an introduction, or you're describing a new room or something, and you've got through the blah blah blah, described everything, done all that, and then it always ends with, "What would you like to do?" You know, I have described what is before you. What would you like to do? And it's you know, that's the key question. It's like I have painted the appropriate picture. I have, you know, described the playground. Now what do you do? And the other thing that comes to mind is also talking to players, how they feel about their characters and what they want from their characters in an out of game perspective. To give an example, in my current Ravnica campaign, I have affectionately referred to the party in the past as the Bullshit Brigade, because they have it certainly started out with a bunch of characters who were just had a lot of OP nonsense on their side. The strongest example I can think of being a Twilight Cleric, which, for those of you who don't know, their channel divinity, one of their channel divinities essentially allows them to give a shield of temporary hit points to everybody within a 30-foot radius, that I believe is something akin to a D6 plus their cleric level. So that meant, essentially, in all fights, I was having to deal with the fact that okay, they've essentially got a regenerating shield at the end of every given turn for, you know, at least 6 to 10 hit points, or, you know, or more than that, you know. So, you know, there were times where it's like, right, okay, I've got to change things up to make it a bit of a challenge, but I didn't want to, talking to that player, I didn't want to nerf her, because she greatly enjoys that sensation of power. She enjoys being that powerful character. And I mean, this sort of already aligns with my philosophy anyway of if you are truly worried about balance, and in my opinion D&D is an inherently unbalanced game, but that's a different discussion entirely. If you are worried about balance, don't nerf the players, buff your monsters. The numbers are all made up. You can, you know, it's like, oh, well, you know, according to the monster manual, this should be a fair fight for if it's a CR14 creature, but my 4 level 14 players utterly destroyed it. Fine, change the numbers. Like, you know, make it the appropriate challenge that you want. And yeah, it's there is a you may think that mechanically nerfing the players and buffing the monsters has the same effect, but emotionally, nerfing the players, in my view, is far worse than buffing the monsters.
Okay, interesting. And if your players sort of approached your story that you've built for them in a way that is, they are out to just derail the entire plot that you've created, they want to go off and do their own thing, they're not interested in the spooky thing that's going on over there, they're not interested in the letter that they received from Captain What's-Her-Face, who's called her to go check out whatever's going on down by the lake. They want to go and do their own thing. They want to go in the tavern, get drunk, and then they want to head to the mountains to go find some giants. How would that...
Cool.
How would you handle that?
Yeah,
would you allow them to do that? Because that sort of... Cause that falls into player agency, doesn't it?
I just very quickly, the thing I always tell people is, yes, you are perfectly free to do whatever you like. Everything else will then react accordingly. You are perfectly free to try and assassinate the king in his throne room. His royal guard will respond by killing you all.
Yeah. And I think as well that that can be a really fun way to engage it. It's like, yeah, you goofed off in the mountains and you got a bunch of loot, but that person whose job that you did is now really annoyed with you, and they're like after you for money because you took an advance on that and you didn't pay it. And so that gives a lot of fun there. That it's like, oh god, no, there are consequences to how I act, and generally speaking, I've found that the groups that do that kind of chaotic nonsense are the ones most likely to roll with it, and it just becomes this big ball of continual nonsense that everyone has fun with, which at the end of the day is why we're here.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
The real thing here is story buy-in. So you should have a hook for every player at the start of the game or the start of the campaign. Even a one-shot, you should say, you're invested, your character's invested because of this. So you haven't got any money, so you need to go to this guy to make money. Or your god has willed you on a quest to do this, whatever it is. And going back to agency, rather than just ask, what would you like to do? There's a really simple phrase which used in all of my career professionally and DMing. It's called bums on a washing line. So you think of a H as the washing line, and then there's all these bums that are W's sat across it. So what, when, where, why, how. And then you've got all the questions that you always need to ask. So you don't need to ask, what are you going to do? You can ask, how do you feel upon walking into this place and smelling this particular smell? Which way would you run if you saw this particular monster? Where do you feel that your character would stand in the current pecking order of the group? And so you create these dynamic open questions, and that's always how you give player agency. By asking those open questions, rather than a yes, no, a closed question, you're going to have all the ammunition that you ever need, and then you can then direct based on where they want you to go with the story. The great idea of a story is always, or any kind of collaborative storytelling, is that you know where you want the players to get to, and you make them believe that they're making the choices to get there, but actually you have this stuff. And sometimes they're going to skip over an entire dungeon or miss a plot point or not do these side quests, and that's fine because you just reuse those mechanics later. But the point is that you allow them to get there on their own merit through that freedom of choice.
Yeah,
nice.
Agreed. I think it is. I think it is a fine balance between freedom and structure. There is nothing more that I love as a DM than my player going, yes, okay, the really cool things over there, but if I was to go in this direction, because that then sets me, like, switches my brain into overdrive, and I go, okay, cool, if you want to go there, we will go. Like, because once again, it's them telling the story, and I'm like, cool, we'll go into the mountains, and we will figure out what happens, like Ben said, figure out the consequences to you ignoring that, because I feel like what that does is it creates a very lived-in world. Yeah. And it soon will ground your players in the world, that when they do arrive back in town and the quest giver goes, it's okay because they killed my entire family, you didn't do the job. And then, like Chris said, you go, how would that make you feel? How does that, like, now that you think this, like, thing through, how does that make, because you want to ground them in those moments, right? But I think it's important not to like put any roadblocks in place where they go, oh, I want to go off into the mountains and search for the giants. Don't go, well, actually they moved house about 3 weeks ago. Like, don't do that bullshit. If they want to go to the mountains, go to the mountains. Let them go. Because I think the players making those decisions and going, this is where we want to take the story. Yeah. By the end of the game, they're going to come at the end of it and go, oh my god, can you believe what a great game that was? We did this and we did that, and it becomes less of, didn't the DM tell a really great story that we went, it becomes very much like, we did this really cool thing, like, and I think that's important because that's really what a GM is there, like, not entirely, but a GM is there to create those opportunities for those players to come out their back of it going, definitely, what a fucking game.
Absolutely.
I think as well, because players will tell you what's important to them, like either directly or indirectly. So if they're really fascinated with one NPC, then you put that NPC in a bunch. If they hate them, put them in even more, because that's great to wind them up. But go where the fun is.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Robert Downey Jr. once said, didn't he, get out of your own way, in a sense of, like, with regards to ego. It's like you're building this story. You can take credit for that, of course you can. But ultimately, what you can really take credit for is allowing them to build their own story, and you to facilitate that for them. I know that's
a conversation that we've had on long road trips, Rob.
Yes,
so much
it is.
About.
Yeah.
So in we've both worked in sales and account management for years, and the most successful guys, I've run teams of it, the most successful guys are always people who drop their ego, and no matter what. And it's a really transferable skill to pro DMing, 100%. Like, we all love to tell stories and that, but actually, like, it's not about us. And as in your own time, in your home games and stuff, yeah, you can do whatever you want. But when you're being paid, what you need to realize is, and I know some of you have said it, and I'm not going against what you said, but this really isn't our story at all. It's their story, because they're paying for that experience, and that's the difference there between a professional and a home game, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
also,
totally.
Like,
But
almost a little bit selfishly, the letting them take the lead is actually so much more fun to play the story with.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
Totally.
having to be agile and adapt. And I think it's that sense of consequence for everybody at the table. Like, even if it is something as small as reusing an NPC multiple times for good or bad reasons, right the way down to, oh, they like this thing. Okay, cool. I'm going to reskin next week's session to look like this. Change that big bad to look like this thing. Just keep them invested. Keep those choices having world-building consequence. And then they'll keep loving it. And as well, for almost echoing what Chris said earlier, if they do scoot past something that you've prepared, that's great, because that's like half a free session that you don't have to plan in the future, because you already have this thing that you can just pick up and drop.
Absolutely,
in front of them again in a slightly different format.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, cool. Anyone else got anything else to add on then to Playing Air Agency till we move on to the next subject?
No, annoyingly, you've pretty much covered everything that I would have said. So
Whatever,
I'll wait for the
James.
next
You had
question.
nothing to say.
So
Are you fucking kidding?
Yeah, like
I agree. Yes.
so
You thought
I
there was
have
you thought there was a
a-
free lunch. That's why you turned up.
I have a perhaps slightly
again.
perhaps a slightly devil's advocate-y sort of question. And I would say this not because I disagree with what anybody has said. It was just something that I wanted to get people's opinion on. Is that as GM, you, well, particularly in a system like D&D, perhaps less so in other systems, but particularly in something like D&D, the DM is still the rules arbiter, is still, you know, is still the person who has to, you know, keep control of the game and, you know, have the rules there to stop it becoming, I have a sword of infinite power, well, I have a sword of infinite power plus one. So to what extent, I suppose, do people feel it is okay to say no to something?
Can I just really quickly? I never say no. A really early lesson I learned was the yes and no but. Like I never dead stop, because you'd never want to stop the flow of a game. If they go, oh, and I reach into the well and pull a sword out, I go, yes, but as you pull the sword out, it turns to dust as you unlock the curse, and it just falls to sand in your hand. You don't ever want to just go, no, you don't.
Absolutely, 100%.
That's not what the module says.
Exactly.
100%.
There's nothing there.
That's still a no, but.
Yeah, but you go, no, but no, you don't pull out the sword. But as you reach into the well, you hear a faint voice echoing from within. Like you don't, because that you're not stopping the player from doing what they're doing as such, but you're twisting it in a way that you can fundamentally pull them into either another story arc or into something else that you have designed. Let's say, so I think that question is more loaded to the messages out of game where they go, hey DM, I've been thinking about my Aarakocra monk, and I'm going to take the grappler feat because I want to fly monsters up 60 feet and just drop them all the time in combat. You go, well, that's cool, but how much fun do you think that's going to be in 6 weeks' time when that's all you do in combat? Like,
yeah, right.
You know, like, you don't want to. I never want to feel like I'm stopping my players from doing something.
Yeah.
I want to work with them to kind of change the perception to the way that I would see it, and say, I mean, I'll give you a prime example. I'm running a high fantasy long-term game at the moment, which is all kind of, Lord of the Rings, Tolkien-esque kind of high fantasy. And one of the players went, I want to bring in a character that was in the Devil's Circus, and when they cast spells, blood pours from their eyes. I was like, that's cool. But do you think this is the right setting for that kind of character, given the rest of the characters that are already in play?
Yeah.
And after a couple of days of back and forth, they went, I'm going to go with a halfling in the same circus, but she's a juggler and nothing bloody happens. Like, that's cool. Let's, you don't want to stop them from doing something unless it's really going to kind of derail shit for you.
One thing that you did say that I'd really like to circle back to, because it fascinated me, because I do the exact opposite. When you were saying about the Aarakocra having the grappling feed, instantly, because again, I think, because obviously Chris's question is more mechanical than kind of narrative here. Instantly, I think that, because again, you want people to be able to do the cool thing they want to be able to do, because it's cool and it gives them these great moments of, yeah, I did the thing. But for me, instantly, I think, okay, great, but how do I counteract that to make that so that it's not the only thing they do in combat, and also how to make it so that everyone else has to do something because of this nonsense. So yeah, you've got the grappling feat and you can drop people from the air, but you've now got loads and loads of ranged attack enemies. So that suddenly gives everyone else a real responsibility that, this guy can pile drive people from 60 feet in the air and absolutely one-shot most bad guys, but also we need to keep this idiot alive, because otherwise we're all going to get screwed, and he's going to be the only person getting pounded on by 11 archers. So again, kind of altering your encounters, I find altering it to what you're doing is the way I like to do that.
I want as well, because obviously part of the question. Sorry, it's probably the only thing I'm going to say tonight. But my chest is still killing me. I do think that I think there's a thing where saying no to players has become like villainized. And I think yes and no, but I absolutely, it's like it's one of the first things I tell like new DMs is to like get used to yes and no butting. But especially with new players and players who do not know the rules, sometimes it's okay to say no. It's like, okay, what do you want to do in your turn? I want to flip over the guard, do a double somersault backflip, land on his neck, and break his neck with my thighs. It's like, okay, no. You can punch him, but you can't double somersault onto his neck and break his neck with your thighs. That's not a mechanic in the game. So
you wouldn't do an acrobatics. You wouldn't do an acrobatics check with like 20 as a score, as a difficulty for that.
I very much letting the dice decide them butts can be quite fun sometimes, even if you do put a ridiculous like level to the roll.
Yeah,
it is quite fun to let them learn their own limitations sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
Failed,
go for it.
No shit.
The guard catches you mid-air and breaks your spine.
Yeah, I would absolutely like that for like a seasoned player, but when you've got a new player learning the rules, like, can I do that? Like, no.
Yeah, sure.
Because again, that's your action is then going to be doing the double somersaults. Then you're going to have, then it's going to be a grapple check. Then it's going to be you can't just do that as an action. It's not you can't just do that and it happens. I say villainized, but sometimes it has to work.
I say to people
with that. It is okay to say no. I mean, with stuff like that, or I can't think of an example off the top of my head of a request a player's made where I've said no, but I know for a fact that we, maybe quite a few of us even in this call, have probably banned spells and stuff. So if a player asks you to take that, that's a no.
Misty Step.
I know quite a few people have banned Silvery Barbs because it's Unfortunately, I'm not one of them.
Silvery Barbs.
I just get increasingly annoyed every time it's cast. But I know that quite a lot of DMs do ban stuff like that, and to an extent that takes away some player agency. And I think if you know that it's going to impact your story one way or another, like it's fine to set boundaries up front. I mean, I feel like maybe I've been quite lucky in that I've never really had players go and completely ignore plot lines. Maybe tangentially have investigated a thing that I didn't expect them to like pick up on right away. But I've never had people who are paying for a D&D game and we put all our story information up front for them to choose from to begin with as well. Like for the weekly campaigns anyway, I know if we're doing a one shot for them, But then if you're building a one shot, you talk to them before the game, sort of get what their expectations are, and then their agency is built in from like the very beginning when you're building that game. And if they join a weekly game of yours, there's like an expectation from them and for the other players that they won't know that you're going to do the thing that's set out in the blurb. So they're not going to turn up and be like, yeah, I know that you advertise this game here where we're fighting dragons, but actually I don't want to do any of that. What I want you to do instead is to run a Feywild game where we're working in a circus. Like that in like that sort of scenario, you'd be well within your rights to sort of be like, hey, look. And maybe that's now more of an out of game conversation to have with players, be like, hey, look, the other guys here have sort of they've joined this game for this reason, so
Yeah.
maybe we leave that and we can use that for a plot hook in the future.
It's absolutely fine to say no, but you need to understand your audience. And so when I'm playing with adults, it really gauge on the kind of thing. If I'm running a stag do, I'm less likely to say no. But the same as if I'm running with autistic kids, because they'll come up with crazy stuff. But if it's a group setting where we're session 12 or 15 into a long form campaign, then that kind of boundary is already there and it's fine. But I would probably, with the flip thing that Jordan gave as an example, depending on the group, I'd probably come up with some crazy dice rolls or whatever to see what came up out of it. I don't think it's like my games for one shots tend to be a lot more chaotic than they are with long form campaigns. So those crazy moments come a lot less. But in a one shot, I want people to remember that, and I want to get rebooked by those people for other one shots, which does happen. So I allow them to have those absolutely manic moments where they can do the backflip and break somebody's legs. And it will be a difficult role, but if they've got the opportunity to do it, it's better to give them that opportunity than to take it away.
Yeah, nice.
No, yeah, I would totally. I would agree with that.
I literally had players. Yeah, I literally had players throw a fighter 60 feet into the air to behead a wyvern midair. I absolutely also allow those silly, stupid moments. I just wanted to like bring up a lot of people villainize the no as a hard stop, and I think there are situations where you absolutely need that hard stop. Otherwise, you're just opening yourself up for more nonsense, especially in a long form campaign. I don't want people to come away from this thinking that I'm a stickler for the rules. I absolutely allow absolutely heinous nonsense sometimes as well. I just think there are times and places for all of those.
I once had some level one characters in the very first start of a campaign. They found out that this kraken was killing all these fishermen, so they decided to get on a boat and go out and try and kill the kraken. And I was like, okay. So they all went out to try and fight this kraken. And I was like, okay, well, as your boat's going across the water, this massive tentacle comes out of the sea and it slams your boat in half. I was like, and okay, let's see if you're going to drown. Yeah, okay. Well, you're wearing heavy armor, so you've drowned. You're now dead. I was like, and I was like, okay, how about? And when I've done it, I've got, okay, right. Let's just pause there for a moment. Should we just rewind the clock and just go back to the point where you decided that this is what you wanted to do?
Oh no, I'd have them waking up on a beach like the next day, like all the dreams
washed up
in like seaweed and shit, and be like, oh, and a note from the Kraken, that was a mistake. Signed the Kraken.
Yeah. It was annoying because the Kraken was like my whole like big bad evil guy that they were going to fight once they get to like a higher level, but it just I was just like, because they did that, I was like, I can't really use that anymore now because that's a bit
like two things. The example with regards to the whole, backflipping, breaking someone's neck thing, the thing I always say to my players is, I don't care how strong you are, you can't pick up the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, something, unless we're playing in a system where that sort of thing is possible, which generally we're not, it's like there are, yes, you may have a strength of 20, yes, you are superhumanly strong, you're not that superhumanly strong. And the other thing with regards to the whole like Kraken thing, particularly if players are going to do something that I think they might know, like for example, we're facing off against this red dragon, I'm going to throw a fireball at it. At that point, I'm always like, make an intelligence check, or something of that nature, and then I can I can then sort of like subtly like not again, not telling them no, not by any stretch, but just subtly saying something like, oh, at level 1, you guys are basically, if an average civilian is 1 layer of tissue paper, at level 1, you guys are basically 2 layers of tissue paper. Krakens are legendary, deadly beings.
They're a telephone book.
Perhaps this is not the best
book,
move.
yeah, right.
Or you recall reading that that dragons, that all dragons are, immune to the types of damage that their breath weapons do. Perhaps a fireball is not best to use against this red dragon. Again, not telling them no, just saying, just sort of basically going, are you sure you want to do that with extra steps?
Yeah.
I'm really sorry. I've been seeing Matt
always-
trying to say something for the last 10 minutes. So I'd
I'm
love to
so
hear from him.
sorry.
It's like,
I'm so sorry. I'm really bad at this sort of thing. I'm so
cool,
sorry.
go for it, man.
No, there was just something that I wanted to say on that of where it is appropriate to say no, and I think it kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier about what do you do when you're faced with a party of people who are like, I want to turn 180 degrees around and I want to see what's behind me. I want to go and do this thing that you haven't prepared for. I feel like I'm right in saying that we've all played with players where if you present them with a new system, there are some players whose first instinct is to try and break it. And it's, I definitely have played with people like that. And I feel like that instinct often comes from a place of kind of stress testing the immersion. So if they say, I want to know that I can turn around and go and do something that you haven't prepared for, what they're trying to test for is, are you flexible enough to create a world that I can genuinely feel immersed in? Can I feel as though there is actually a living world outside of your current narrow field of view? I feel like the same thing is also true at the other end of saying no to players sometimes. Or even like no, but sometimes there are players who are like, for example, to go back to what you were saying, Alex, can I pick up the Statue of Liberty? They're also kind of testing for immersion, and I think it's perfectly reasonable for the sake of maintaining that immersion to say like, on this occasion, I'm going to say you can't pick up the Statue of Liberty, or you as we suggested, go with like, okay, you can have a go at it, you can do this incredibly improbable thing, but I'm telling you up front that it is incredibly improbable that you're going to do it. I think that really, really allowing everything to get through the net can hamstring the amount of immersion that you have, because suddenly you're playing in a game where seemingly anything is possible and your players can come up with any kind of madcap scheme, and I think sometimes they won't like that. It'll be fun for a moment while they're doing it, and then afterwards it will feel like some of the reality of your world has been lost, if that makes sense.
It does. It's like playing Grand Theft Auto and you get to the point where you've blown everything up and you drive around trying to obey the laws because breaking the game and destroying everything is no longer fun.
Yeah,
You
right.
drive at the speed limit.
Yeah, you drive at the speed limit, you're stopping at all the red lights. like,
Yeah, like
It
a
also
cheat
depends on
code.
And I am at driving.
What
It
you're
also
saying, that actually
depends-
ties into my. Sorry, go on.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, because while you guys have been talking, I've been racking my brains trying to think of an incident where I have actually said no to a player. I'm really struggling to think of one. The closest I've ever come was when I was running that PvP game, where, for those who didn't see that, basically it was 2 parties playing alternate weeks. Both of them represented a prince who was trying to win the crown of the empire. So one week it'd be the people supporting one prince, and then the next week it'd be the other group. And so whatever they did would impact the other group, and they were constantly fighting against one another. Even though the closest I've ever come to saying no was in that game, but even then it was, yes, you can, but anything you do, they can also do. So it's kind of Dark Souls rules, which is also a very fun way to think about, I think. And again, as long as you make it clear to players like, yeah, if you can do that, though, enemies can do that to you too. It cuts down a little bit on rules lawyering, because it's like, I'm not entirely sure I want to be on the receiving end of this. But also as well, it does mean that there are those, oh crap moments when they actually get hubris.
That's part of the reason why I don't ban spells, even if I really don't like them, because when it's like You know, it's like, all right, constantly using silvery barbs, are you? Constantly using counterspell, are you? It's like, oh dear, turns out the enemy wizard can do that too. What? But that's not fair. It's perfectly fair. It's within the system. And just
You've been doing it the whole time.
Exactly. And it's like, yeah, sucks, doesn't
Counterspell
it?
and healing spell on the player on a second death save.
Oh,
exactly.
I don't think I have it in me to be that evil.
The other thing I was going to say is that, like, going back to what you said, Matt, about like, you know, can't pick up the Statue of Liberty thing. It's the scale I currently use for like player power level within an RPG is on a scale of Call of Cthulhu to 7th Sea. In Call of Cthulhu, you can, you know, trip over a step, break your leg, and be in hospital for 6 in-game months. And, you know, you essentially the expectation for the play from GM to players essentially is you don't win, you survive. Or it's like, you don't win, it just depends on how long you last, or something like that. Whereas on the other end of the scale, 7th Sea, like, the players are all ridiculously powerful, and, you know, 3 people are expected to be able to easily take out a tavern of 30 enemies. So, it very much depends on, you know, on the system and, like, and players' expectations going in of, you know, it's like, you shouldn't explain a Call of Cthulhu game to someone as like, yes, you're going to be a superhero, because that's not how the system is designed. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had, like, the only other thing I sort of wanted to add that's not really related to anything we've said so far
You
is
can't add
that
it, James.
another part of. Sorry, what?
Sorry, I was joking. Don't carry on.
That genuinely didn't hear what you said.
It's all right.
Is that sort of part of making sure that players have agency is also sort of balancing their voices amongst themselves, because it's very we've been talking so far as if the players are all this like one glob of people that are against the DM, but realistically there's between, I don't know, I've run games with up to 10 people, so between 4 and 10 people that you're trying to balance out, and there will always be, especially in larger groups, like a more prominent voice, and it's giving, like, another part of like giving the players agency is making sure that it's players agency, not player agency, and one player's not dictating everything that's going on, and you are like addressing individual players. How did you feel about this, and making sure to go to different people throughout the game to make sure they all do get a chance to shine, or you get their input specifically, which is very important with new players who either, like, if you've got a group that hasn't played before, making sure that everyone gets a chance to do something, and if they're new coming into an ongoing thing as well, also making sure that they sort of feel integrated into that and sort of feel empowered to make those decisions and talk freely within the group.
It's an excellent point. One thing that I like to do on that front is when, because you often have those instances where somebody's about to do something, they go, oh no, wait, I do that. And I really love to get people to roll initiative in that moment. And then we have this really slowed down version of what happens in those 6 seconds. Like, okay, you go first. What's your character doing? Then it's you. Then it's you. And so they're all reacting to this thing as it's happening, which is a great way to add lots of intensity, especially to out of combat situations where it's like, oh God, what on earth are you doing? Why are you doing that? Put that down. Oh no. And that's a lot of fun, I think.
I think that might be one of the only scenarios where I do a soft no, is if someone is talking and someone talks over them to say, well, I go into the, while they're talking to them, I go into the bag and I try and steal this. I'm like, no, we'll finish the conversation first that has been started by this other player, and then if you still want to do that after, we'll come back to it. But for now, no.
What I've done in the past is, especially with stag do's, because stag do's are notorious for this happening, where you've got one player that is just like not into it, or you got like a couple of them that are just never played before, aren't interested, but because it's the groom and he wants to play D&D, they're all there doing it. Is to ask whoever's organised it, is there anyone here that you think is not going to be engaged before the game? I'd be like, can you put them next to me, sit them next to me, and then be like, what do you think about this? You know, then you know straight away that you've got this person, you know, and as soon as they do something that is like, you know, a good decision, you can really be like, yeah, yeah, that's what an awesome idea. Not obviously not in a patronizing way, but in a way that is like empowers them and makes them feel, oh, okay, great. I think I've got a hand of this game.
Yeah, I mean, especially in big groups as well, if it's loud and stuff, if they're sat at the other end of the table, and even if they're not a quiet person, even if just talking at a normal volume, it's going to be a struggle to hear them.
Yeah.
It helps if you know you're going to have someone who's not going to be as engaged sitting near you. You will always hear their input, and then you can address it specifically, and that would be good. It's not something I've done actually to ask them to be sat near me, but that is a really good idea, and I'll probably do that next time I run a stag do or something.
You don't have to say that, James. It's okay. You can just.
I'm
Such an ass kiss. Such an
The
ass
other one
kiss.
is, and this is one I do regularly. Again, we talked about it recently, Rob. I think, like get them coupled up. So someone who does know how to play with someone who doesn't, and then they've got shared custody. And then
nice.
what you'll find is that the guy who doesn't know how to play will actually ask the guy who does know how to play, like, can we do this, this, and this? And they'll be working it out between them, especially in larger groups. So, like, if you've got over 10 players, then you want them to be grouped up into twos, and then it just makes it cool. And then, if one of them goes off to the toilet or whatever, then they self-police a lot more as well, because the ones who want to play be like, shut the fuck up, do this. So yeah, that works well too.
Yeah, good idea. I think as well, finding out who, because a lot of the times when it's a stag do, or you're running a game with a group of guys, there's always going to be that one player who probably is their DM often, and that person is often what I found anyway is often the person that is the most outspoken, the most wants to like knows that knows the story hooks, knows what you're sort of doing, and kind of like tries to lead the party in the direction that they think the story needs to go, which is often great, but also it's like, well, you want to give the players the agency to decide themselves. So it's also good to talk to them as well beforehand and be like, right, obviously you've DM'd before. I don't want it to be kind of like, I don't know how you'd word it really. How would you word it? What would you say to someone like that?
You want to essentially, you don't want them to be disruptive, but the best way to do that is stroke their ego at the start. Oh, what are you DMing at the moment? Blah blah blah. And let them have a little pinnacle, and then it becomes rather than this thing where they want to try and outdo you. You then become on a level. You let them see you as an equal, and then that becomes a lot easier for sure. But yeah, that's a very common problem.
And just make sure you engage the other players. Like if the other DM, as it were, is constantly making suggestions, you just turn to the other players and go, do you all agree with that? Or does anybody have any other suggestions they want to make? Is something like that. Just offer them the opportunity. But if they're all happy to go along with that suggestion, it's like, okay, fine.
Yeah.
And if that fails, fight them.
Exactly. Exactly.
A really easy way to do that is the quieter players ask how their character feels about the decision. What would your just say, oh yeah, we're gonna go down the road and kill the dragon, and on the way, just pinpoint the quieter person and go, how does your character feel about this? What's going through that character's mind right now? Oh, well, I'm not happy about it. Is this something that your character is having in a battle with? Is it that they don't want to say something for a reason? And really kind of drive home, is it them as a player not trying to be combative, or are they just trying to, or is it the character thing, and really kind of like center them into, again, in the moment, really.
Yeah, nice. Cool. All right, guys, I think, we're approaching up to nearly an hour. I do have another thing to talk about, but I think actually that's probably quite good. I think we'll leave it with just one subject. I think that was quite good. I know you guys are obviously, I think Harry's food is probably going cold by the looks of things he put out the oven earlier. And
I put it back in the oven.
Oh, did you? Okay, well, let's hope it's not burnt. All right, cool. And does anyone want to sort of leave us with anything before we turn off?
Yeah, one thing I wanted to table to you guys, because I know this is something I kind of mooted, but we never kind of made any arrangements about. Because one thing I would love to do, if everyone else is up for it, is actually do roundtable DM sessions. So like have one person run a one shot or whatever, and other people sit in on that game, not only to kind of give them feedback as a DM, but also as a chance to kind of look at things we might not have tried, like systems we've not tried, or like if somebody's working on a module for whatever reason.
Yeah, nice.
And that way, would be a great way to kind of learn from each other, and as well a great way to build a bit more cohesion in the team and actually get to know you guys, because I only ever get to interact with you lot when it's like very rarely the in-person events or like it's something like this, you know. So I think that'd be really great if you guys are up for that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea, Ben. Cool. Yeah, that's something we've been knocking around for a while, isn't it? We've never quite got it off the ground. Yeah, that'd be cool. I'll be up for that. Yeah. All right. I think with the round tables, like what we've done tonight, I think we'll stick to the format of just having this once every quarter. With regards to doing the one shots, maybe do one. We've got Rolldark Fest end of April, haven't we? So maybe. Well, it doesn't really matter when we do it. I suppose we could do it in March. Would anyone like to do it in March? Out of you guys? Who would?
I mean,
yeah.
If anyone's interested, because I know I've not stopped talking about this, and I'm terribly sorry, but I've been playing Mothership, which is a shocker. I know nobody has ever heard me talking about Mothership, not even once. But
only for an hour and a half on the Rolldark podcast.
Yeah, again,
and then a further 2 hours while I was editing it.
But yeah, if anyone's interested, I could definitely run one shot of that. It's a brilliant little system.
I'd be so up for that.
I'm well up for it.
Someone gifted me the starter box. So
nice!
I ran one session of it a couple of weeks ago, and it was so fun. I'd love to play.
Is it? Is it good?
So good.
Yeah, really good.
Right, tell you what. Let's end this video here, and then we'll chat a bit more if anyone wants to stay on and talk about Mothership. So I'll just stop the recording. Thanks for watching, everybody. Hopefully we'll see you guys at the next round table. Guys, thank you for coming for this. It's been really cool. And we'll just end it there. Nice one. Take care, guys. Adios, muchachos.
Take care, everyone.